Don't you know your place? The words cut through the marble-floored dining room like an ice shard, sharp and unforgiving, bouncing off the crystal chandeliers and silencing the soft hum of the jazz trio tucked into the corner. Jasmine Carter froze mid-step, her hand steady on the polished silver tray, the delicate clinking of glass suspended in the air as every patron turned, eyes wide, some leaning back in chairs, forks suspended above plates, a collective pause that held the tension like a taut wire. The room smelled of roasted salmon, truffle butter, and fresh-baked sourdough, a sophisticated aroma meant to comfort. But tonight it only emphasized the abrupt sting of humiliation as Bradley Hayes, the entitled guest, leaned back in his leather chair, smirk playing on his lips, clearly enjoying the spectacle he had created. Jasmine's almond-shaped eyes flicked toward him, calm yet burning with a quiet intensity, her lips pressed together, the slight flare of her nostrils betraying the controlled strength within, her posture a perfect balance of grace and resilience, every movement measured, deliberate, her black uniform crisp against her skin, a simple badge pinned neatly, hair tied back, minimal jewelry, nothing to distract from her dignity. The soft amber lights of the high-ceilinged Manhattan restaurant cast long shadows across the mahogany tables, reflecting the glitter of wine glasses and the muted shimmer of silverware, the clatter of dishes and soft murmur of distant conversations fading to a hushed silence as the moment stretched taut, each second echoing with anticipation. At the far end of the dining room, Ethan Montgomery, a tall, composed figure in a tailored charcoal suit, observed from across the room, his sharp blue eyes catching every nuance, the subtle shift in Jasmine's stance, the smirk of the guest, the ripple of unease spreading through the nearby patrons. Ethan's presence radiated authority without a word, the kind of power built not just on wealth, but on an acute awareness of human nature, a calm energy that could bend a room to order without a raised voice. The faint aroma of his cologne hinting of cedar and fresh linen, grounding yet commanding. Jasmine inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the room's gaze but refusing to yield to panic, her mind calculating, noting every twitch of Bradley's fingers, every darting glance, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the slight rise of his chest as he prepared for another condescending remark. The floor beneath her shoes seemed to solidify, the polished oak reflecting the overhead lights like a stage set, as the distant tick of a grandfather clock echoed, measuring each heartbeat in stark, deliberate beats. Jasmine's past had taught her endurance, long nights balancing multiple jobs, raising her younger brother while paying tuition and rent, had honed patience into a quiet armor, an invisible shield of poise that few could penetrate. She took one careful step toward the table, the tray balanced with precision, her fingertips brushing the stem of a crystal water glass. And in that moment, the entire dining room seemed to exhale collectively, the tension thick as fog, the entitled guest leaning forward, unaware that the tides of control were about to shift, and Ethan's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, the faintest hint of a smile curling at the corner of his mouth, a silent signal that Jasmine understood without a word, that the room's narrative was about to be rewritten. And even as Bradley Hayes opened his mouth to continue his display of arrogance, the air itself seemed to tense, poised on the edge of revelation, every shadow, every reflective surface in the dining room bearing witness to the calm before the storm of justice that Jasmine Carter, Black Waitress, was about to command with nothing but her presence and the quiet authority lent by Ethan Montgomery's unseen but palpable guidance. The soft glow from the chandeliers reflected off the polished silverware, casting intricate patterns across the crisp white linens of the tables, while the faint strains of a live jazz trio wove through the room, punctuating the tense atmosphere with a rhythm that seemed almost hesitant. Jasmine Carter moved with deliberate calm, each step measured, the weight of her tray perfectly balanced, her posture unyielding as she navigated the space, every eye on her, some in admiration, others in skepticism. Ethan Montgomery remained a few feet behind, his tailored charcoal suit impeccable, the cut emphasizing a broad shoulder and confident stance, his gaze scanning every detail of the dining room, the subtle rise and fall of Jasmine's chest, the nervous adjustments of Bradley Hayes, the entitled guest whose earlier arrogance had caused the room to pause in collective discomfort. The walls, lined with dark oak panels and mirrors that doubled the ambient light, seemed to amplify the intensity of each microexpression, each movement frozen momentarily in the reflection, capturing the subtle drama of anticipation. Jasmine's mind cataloged every detail: the gentle sway of the candle flames, the faint scent of truffle butter lingering from the previous course, the muted clinking of water glasses as a server carefully adjusted their placement, all creating a sensory tapestry that heightened the suspense. Ethan's presence added a silent authority, a gravitational pull that seemed to align the room with his measured calm, his eyes narrowing slightly as he watched Jasmine prepare to respond to the lingering tension, the guest shifting in his seat, unsure of how to reclaim control without seeming hasty. The ambient sounds, from the soft scratch of a pen on a napkin to the distant murmur of conversations at other tables, formed a backdrop that made every small movement and subtle gesture carry immense weight, turning ordinary actions into deliberate signals within the unspoken narrative of power and respect. Jasmine adjusted her grip on the tray, a microcosm of focus and poise, and as she approached the table with a soft yet assertive step, the subtle click of her shoes on the hardwood floor drew the attention of the nearby patrons, a sound that seemed disproportionately significant against the hushed tension. Ethan's gaze met hers, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between them, a quiet signal that she was not alone in asserting presence and command, that the narrative of dominance being challenged could shift with one precise, composed action. The guest, Bradley Hayes, felt the shift immediately, the earlier confidence in his posture. Subtly undermined by the poised authority of both Jasmine and Ethan, his smirk faltering as he recognized the invisible balance of influence adjusting in real time. The room itself seeming to lean toward an equilibrium orchestrated not by volume, but by measured presence and unflinching composure. Each table, each patron, each server became part of a silent chorus witnessing the subtle recalibration of social hierarchy, the ordinary elements of fine dining amplified into instruments of tension and anticipation, creating a scene where every breath, every glance, every nuanced movement held significance far beyond the immediate moment. Jasmine's focus sharpened further, her peripheral vision noting the slight twitch in Bradley's hand as he considered his next move, while the soft illumination from the chandeliers highlighted the quiet determination in her eyes, the subtle resilience built over years of careful observation and disciplined self-possession, preparing her to act with a precision that would command attention and redefine the narrative in the room, all while maintaining the serene elegance expected in a high-end Manhattan establishment, a stage perfectly set for a quiet yet undeniable shift in authority. Jasmine Carter paused for a fraction of a second at the edge of the table, her gaze sweeping over the gathered patrons, noting the subtle shifts in posture, the whispered exchanges, the faint rise of eyebrows as they absorbed the tension, each movement a silent testimony to the recalibration of the social dynamic unfolding before them. Her fingers adjusted the rim of a water glass with a light, deliberate touch, the polished crystal catching the amber light of the chandelier and scattering tiny prisms across the linen, reflecting in miniature the multitude of eyes watching her every move. Ethan Montgomery remained an understated presence a few feet behind her, his posture impeccable, his calm authority like an invisible current that influenced the entire room, his eyes tracking every microexpression, the tightening of a jaw here, the darting glance there, as if orchestrating a symphony of silent signals that only Jasmine could translate into measured action. The ambient hum of the restaurant, once soothing, now seemed charged, the subtle scraping of chairs, the soft shuffle of a server adjusting a plate, and the faint clink of silverware amplified against the concentrated stillness, creating a heightened sensory field in which every detail mattered, every gesture carried weight. Jasmine's mind raced in precise calculations, anticipating the next move of Bradley Hayes, the entitled guest, while keeping her demeanor composed, her shoulders squared, back straight, eyes unwavering, projecting an aura of unshakable poise that contrasted sharply with the subtle unease creeping across his expression. She noted the slight tilt of his head, the narrowing of his eyes, the way he leaned back in his chair in a half-conscious effort to reassert control, unaware that the gravitational pull of Ethan's calm presence and her quiet determination had already shifted the room's power balance. The low murmur of conversations at other tables, the faint rasp of a waiter clearing a side table, even the soft tapping of a fork against a plate became elements in a tapestry of tension, each contributing to the atmosphere that magnified the impending reversal. Jasmine took another careful step, the polished wood beneath her shoes resonating softly with each motion, her breathing even, controlled, the subtle rise and fall almost imperceptible, yet radiating confidence, her movements a choreographed display of both strength and grace, signaling to everyone that the narrative of authority was about to pivot. Ethan's gaze met hers briefly, the smallest of nods passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of mutual understanding, a cue that Jasmine interpreted with precision, her posture straightening further, her presence commanding without a single word. And in that moment, the entitled guest felt the subtle shift, the invisible current of influence gently but unmistakably redirecting the energy of the room. The gathered patrons leaning in slightly, captivated by the quiet drama unfolding. The delicate balance of observation and anticipation, the poised confidence of Jasmine Carter, Black Waitress, aligned seamlessly with the understated authority of Ethan Montgomery, setting the stage for a demonstration of control and composure that would reverberate through every corner of the Manhattan dining room, every polished surface reflecting the tension and the subtle promise of resolution yet to come. Jasmine Carter's eyes flicked toward the ornate clock mounted on the far wall, its second hand sweeping in deliberate, unhurried motion, as if measuring not just time but the weight of every decision, every silent judgment that had passed in the room up to this point. The chandeliers above bathed the space in a soft golden glow, their intricate crystals casting fractured reflections across the polished wood floors and the linen-covered tables, creating a subtle mosaic of light that seemed to ripple with the collective anticipation of the diners. Ethan Montgomery remained a few steps behind, his posture relaxed yet authoritative, hands loosely clasped at his front, his sharp blue eyes tracing the micro-expressions of every guest, noting the brief glances exchanged, the subtle tightening of jaws, the barely perceptible shift of posture that betrayed uncertainty. Jasmine adjusted her grip on the tray once more, the delicate balance of glass and silver demanding her full attention, yet her mind was focused entirely on the interpersonal currents swirling around her, the unspoken tension coiling in the air like a taut spring. She observed Bradley Hayes, the entitled guest, leaning slightly forward, his confident facade beginning to waver as he registered the quiet authority emanating from both Jasmine and Ethan, the subtle magnetism of composed presence challenging his previously unchecked dominance. The ambient sounds of the restaurant, soft footsteps of servers moving between tables, the faint scraping of chairs, the quiet clatter of silverware, seemed amplified, each noise resonating in the heightened awareness of the room, every patron becoming an unwitting participant in the unfolding drama. Jasmine's breathing remained measured, a steady rhythm that contrasted with the flicker of tension visible in Bradley's clenched fingers, the slight furrow of his brow, the restless tap of his shoe against the polished floor. She moved deliberately, stepping just far enough to convey engagement without haste, every inch of her motion radiating calm authority, signaling not confrontation but an unshakable presence that demanded respect. Ethan's subtle nod caught her attention, a silent affirmation that she understood the unspoken choreography of the moment, the tacit acknowledgement of readiness to assert influence through poise and intellect rather than overt command. The light from the chandeliers glinted off the polished surfaces of the tables and the stemware, catching in the eyes of the onlookers, who could not help but notice the interplay of confidence and composure radiating from Jasmine, now paired seamlessly with Ethan's quiet yet palpable authority. Even the soft murmur of conversation seemed to bend toward anticipation, the rhythm of the room adjusting, attuned to the silent tension building toward an inevitable shift in control, a demonstration that true authority is not declared but observed, measured in the unspoken recognition of competence, dignity, and calculated composure. Every patron, every server, every reflection in the mirrored panels lining the walls bore witness to Jasmine Carter's poised determination and Ethan Montgomery's commanding calm, together orchestrating an invisible yet undeniable pivot in the social equilibrium of the space. A subtle recalibration of power that rendered the entitled guest momentarily uncertain. The restaurant itself transformed into a stage upon which the quiet assertion of presence carried the weight of influence and respect, preparing the scene for the unfolding reversal of authority. Jasmine Carter paused for a heartbeat, her gaze locking on Bradley Hayes, noting the subtle twitch of his fingers, the faint lift of an eyebrow, and the slight tightening around his eyes that betrayed the faintest hint of uncertainty. The chandeliers above reflected off the polished silverware, scattering shards of light that danced across the table linens, highlighting the contrast between her calm, measured presence and the unease rippling from the entitled guest. Ethan Montgomery remained an understated sentinel a few steps behind, his posture relaxed yet unmistakably commanding, his eyes tracking every microexpression, every slight movement, his presence alone shifting the energy of the room, the patron subconsciously leaning into the invisible field of authority he exuded. Jasmine's steps were deliberate as she moved closer, the soft click of her shoes against the hardwood floor resonating like a metronome, marking the rhythm of anticipation that seemed to pulse through the restaurant, each breath and movement amplified by the hush settling over the tables. The subtle scent of roasted salmon mingled with the faint aroma of polished wood and fresh linens, grounding the scene in tangible reality while intensifying the charged atmosphere, every sensory detail magnifying the suspense. Jasmine adjusted her grip on the tray, a precise movement that reflected years of discipline, her almond-shaped eyes unwavering, scanning the room, noting the soft intake of breath from nearby diners, the slight shift of chairs, the fleeting exchange of glances, all evidence of the impact her composed presence was having. Ethan's subtle nod caught her attention, a quiet signal of acknowledgement and alignment, the shared understanding between them translating into an unspoken coordination that elevated the subtle power dynamics at play. The entitled guest's confidence wavered imperceptibly as he registered the silent but undeniable assertion of authority emanating from Jasmine and reinforced by Ethan, his earlier smirk replaced by a tense, calculated pause, his gestures faltering under the weight of quiet control that required no words. The ambient sounds, the gentle clatter of cutlery, the soft shuffle of a server moving behind the tables, the hushed murmur of patrons, combined with the visual interplay of light and shadow, creating a heightened awareness where every action, every glance, every subtle signal carried amplified significance. Jasmine took a measured step closer, her posture impeccable, movements precise yet fluid, projecting a presence that demanded attention and respect, her focus unbroken, her breathing controlled, steady, and deliberate, conveying authority through calm, measured action rather than overt words. Ethan's gaze remained on the guest, noting the gradual shift in demeanor, the slight lean backward, the subtle retreat, each signal reinforcing the balance of power swinging subtly toward Jasmine. The room collectively sensing the impending shift, the recalibration of social hierarchy unfolding before their eyes. Every patron, every reflection in the mirrors lining the walls, every flicker of light across the polished surfaces bore witness to the poised determination of Jasmine Carter and the quiet, commanding influence of Ethan Montgomery, together orchestrating a tangible but silent pivot in authority that resonated through the entire dining room, creating a scene where the interplay of presence, composure, and subtle influence reshaped the energy of the space in a precise, elegant, and undeniable reversal of control. Jasmine Carter took a deep, measured breath, her chest rising and falling with deliberate calm, feeling the weight of the entire dining room focused on her subtle, unspoken movements. The soft golden light from the chandeliers bathed the polished tables, the crystal glasses catching the glow and sending fractured reflections across the crisp white linens, highlighting the contrast between poised composure and the uneasy energy radiating from Bradley Hayes. Ethan Montgomery's eyes never left the entitled guest, his posture relaxed, yet radiating quiet authority, his presence like a gravitational field aligning the room with his sense of order, an invisible reinforcement that Jasmine intuitively felt and mirrored with precise, confident movements. Each step she took was intentional, the polished wood floor beneath her shoes creating a gentle resonance, a sound that punctuated the near-silent tension in the room. Every glance and gesture magnified in significance as the patrons collectively leaned in, sensing the subtle shift in control. Jasmine adjusted the tray she carried, her fingers lightly brushing a crystal water glass, a movement so graceful that it commanded attention without speaking a word, her eyes locking momentarily on the guest to silently assert that the dynamic was no longer his to dictate. Ethan's subtle nod caught her periphery, a quiet signal of shared understanding and coordination, a silent communication that allowed Jasmine to act with full awareness of the shift in authority that was about to unfold. Bradley Hayes's earlier smirk faltered as he registered the presence and composure of both Jasmine and Ethan, the room around him seemingly recalibrating, the ambient sounds, the soft shuffle of a server, the gentle clinking of cutlery, the faint murmur of conversations, serving to heighten the tension, each auditory cue a marker of the room's collective anticipation. Jasmine's breathing remained steady, controlled, projecting calm authority that contrasted sharply with the subtle flinch in the guest's posture, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the tentative hand gestures now subdued under the quiet pressure of poised influence. The chandelier's reflections danced across the mirrored panels lining the walls, catching in the eyes of nearby patrons, amplifying the visual presence of Jasmine as she advanced with calculated grace, each movement a statement of measured power, every detail of her appearance, from the crispness of her uniform to the controlled rhythm of her step, signaling confidence and capability. Ethan's gaze remained fixed, noting the incremental shifts in the guest's demeanor, the subtle retreat, the almost imperceptible pause in his gestures, as the combination of Jasmine's poised assertiveness and Ethan's quiet authority created an undeniable gravitational shift in the room. Every patron, every reflection, every element of the restaurant, the polished silverware, the gleaming glasses, the soft golden light, bore witness to the orchestrated recalibration of influence, the quiet assertion of presence that transformed the energy of the space, preparing the room for the inevitable moment when Jasmine Carter, supported by Ethan Montgomery, would solidify the reversal of control and establish the true balance of respect and authority in the dining room. Jasmine Carter finally reached the edge of the table, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the dining room without a single word, her almond-shaped eyes steady, unwavering, radiating a quiet confidence that demanded recognition. The entitled guest, Bradley Hayes, shifted uncomfortably, his previous smirk replaced by a subtle tightening of his jaw and a brief pause in his gestures as he realized the balance of power had subtly but unmistakably shifted, the room itself seeming to respond to the new dynamic. Ethan Montgomery remained a few steps behind, his posture relaxed but purposeful, his gaze sweeping the room, noting the collective intake of breath, the quickened pulse of anticipation, and the subtle leaning forward of patrons who could not help but witness the unfolding moment of authority and respect. The chandeliers above cast fractured light across the polished wood floors and crystal glassware, glinting in the eyes of diners who were caught in the quiet drama, every reflection emphasizing the contrast between Jasmine's composed control and the guest's faltering confidence. Jasmine took a measured step closer, her hand lightly adjusting a silver tray, a small, deliberate motion that conveyed precision and poise, a silent signal to both the entitled guest and the onlookers that she was fully aware of the room's shifting energy and prepared to command it with grace. The low murmur of servers moving quietly behind the tables, the soft scrape of chair legs against the hardwood, and the subtle clink of cutlery created a rhythmic backdrop that heightened the tension, making each motion and glance carry amplified significance, as if the entire space were holding its breath in anticipation. Ethan's eyes met Jasmine's for the briefest of moments, a subtle nod passing between them, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding and timing, a signal that Jasmine was not alone and that the quiet influence they projected together was about to manifest fully. The entitled guest's posture straightened slightly, then faltered again, his confidence eroded by the calm, measured presence of Jasmine and the reinforcing authority of Ethan, the collective awareness of the diners amplifying the effect. their attention riveted on the nuanced interplay of power unfolding in real time. Jasmine's breathing remained steady, her focus unwavering, projecting an aura of composed strength that contrasted sharply with Bradley's tentative gestures, the soft lighting catching the subtle expressions on both their faces, reflecting a story of silent assertion, resilience, and recalibrated authority. Every table, every mirrored panel, every polished surface in the restaurant became a witness to the moment, the ambient light and sound emphasizing the precision of Jasmine's movements, the control in her stance, and the undeniable shift in influence, as she quietly but unmistakably reclaimed respect and redefined the room's social hierarchy. The entitled guest rendered momentarily powerless by the combination of her poise and Ethan Montgomery's subtle yet commanding presence, creating a tableau of authority and composure that resonated across the entire space, leaving a palpable impression of dignity, respect, and quiet triumph. Jasmine Carter allowed a subtle, almost imperceptible smile to touch her lips as the room finally exhaled collectively, the tension that had been coiled so tightly for the past several minutes slowly dissipating like fog lifting under the morning sun, each patron's eyes reflecting a mixture of awe, relief, and a quiet admiration for the composure she had maintained throughout. The crystal glasses on the tables caught the overhead light and refracted it into tiny prisms that danced across the polished mahogany surfaces, each spark of reflection drawing attention to Jasmine's poised stance, the elegance of her uniform, and the controlled grace with which she navigated the space, every gesture deliberate, every movement conveying a quiet but undeniable authority. Ethan Montgomery remained a few paces behind, his expression calm, yet subtly approving, the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth acknowledging the seamless execution of their silent collaboration, the room now attuned to their measured presence rather than the previous discord created by the entitled guest. Bradley Hayes, who had spent the last several minutes projecting confidence and control, now shifted in his seat, his earlier smirk replaced by a contemplative pause, the subtle downward cast of his eyes betraying the recognition that the balance of influence had irrevocably shifted, the unspoken acknowledgement of Jasmine's quiet command settling over him as the other diners turned their attention back to their meals, conversations resuming with a hushed reverence for the display they had witnessed. The soft murmur of servers moving efficiently between tables, the gentle scrape of chairs being adjusted, and the faint, rhythmic clink of cutlery created an ambient soundscape that underscored the resolution of the moment. The ordinary noises of fine dining transformed into markers of decorum and acknowledgement, a backdrop against which Jasmine's subtle triumph could be appreciated in full. Jasmine adjusted the tray she carried with a light, deliberate motion, the glassware balanced perfectly, her eyes sweeping the room once more, noting the softened expressions of the patrons, the quiet nods of respect from those previously indifferent, and the slight slump of tension from Bradley, all confirming the completion of a delicate but decisive rebalancing of authority. Ethan's presence continued to reinforce the room's equilibrium, his poised stance and understated confidence lending weight to the effect of Jasmine's composed actions, ensuring that the shift in perception and influence would resonate beyond this single moment, a demonstration of how calm determination, quiet observation, and impeccable timing could alter dynamics in even the most controlled environments. Every mirrored panel, every reflection of light across the polished surfaces, every nuanced movement within the dining room bore witness to the culmination of Jasmine Carter's careful navigation, the unspoken mentorship and subtle support from Ethan Montgomery, and the resulting recalibration of respect and authority, leaving a lasting impression of dignity, composure, and the quiet power of presence. The room, now settling back into its rhythm, carried the echo of the reversal, a tangible awareness that decorum, observation, and calm confidence had reshaped the social hierarchy, the entitled guest silently acknowledging the subtle but undeniable shift as Jasmine moved with measured grace toward the next task, each step reinforcing her earned respect and the newfound equilibrium that now defined the space. Jasmine Carter moved with quiet deliberation toward the service area, her tray still balanced perfectly, the ambient light from the chandeliers glinting off the crystal glasses and polished silverware, creating tiny prisms that scattered across the table linens and reflected in the wide eyes of patrons who had witnessed the subtle yet undeniable shift in authority. Ethan Montgomery followed closely, a calm presence that radiated assurance, his tailored charcoal suit immaculate, his posture relaxed but commanding, a silent affirmation of the strategic alliance that had restored balance to the room. The entitled guest, Bradley Hayes, now sat with a measured restraint, the earlier tension replaced by a subdued recognition of the reversal, his eyes flicking briefly toward Jasmine, with an unspoken acknowledgement of the composure and presence that had quietly reshaped the dynamics in the space. Jasmine's almond-shaped eyes scanned the room one final time, noting the softened expressions, the small nods of respect from nearby diners, and the subtle attentiveness of the servers who had moved in synchrony to support the flow of service, all bearing witness to the efficacy of poised determination. The gentle hum of conversation resumed with an undertone of reverence. The soft scrape of chairs, the faint clink of cutlery, and the muted laughter of patrons forming an ambient rhythm that underscored the completion of a delicate yet precise orchestration of influence. Jasmine adjusted the tray with a light, practiced motion, each movement demonstrating her control, her awareness, and the calm authority that had allowed her to navigate the complex interplay of personalities without a word, her poise amplifying the respect she had quietly commanded throughout the evening. Ethan Montgomery's eyes met hers briefly, a shared acknowledgement passing between them, the culmination of subtle coordination, mutual understanding, and strategic presence, confirming that the room's hierarchy had been recalibrated through quiet intelligence and composure rather than overt declaration. The chandelier's reflections and the mirrored panels lining the walls continued to capture every detail of the scene, magnifying the visual narrative of dignity and control, the polished surfaces reflecting the interplay of light and shadow, the subtle expressions of patrons, and the poised movements of Jasmine as she moved seamlessly toward the next table. Every element of the restaurant, the soft aroma of the previous course lingering, the gentle ripple of wine in crystal glasses, the polished wood floors beneath carefully measured steps, contributed to a sensory tableau in which the quiet assertion of authority resonated fully, leaving a lasting impression on every observer. The room had settled into a rhythm that acknowledged Jasmine Carter's earned respect and the understated power of Ethan Montgomery's guidance, the entitled guest quietly accepting the recalibrated balance, the ambient light capturing the serenity, dignity, and composed triumph of the moment. Every mirrored reflection, every glint of crystal, every carefully observed motion in the space bore witness to the narrative of quiet dominance, moral authority, and subtle triumph, leaving the atmosphere charged with a sense of respect, composure, and the enduring presence of dignity that would linger in the minds of the diners long after the evening concluded. A testament to the quiet but undeniable power of observation, strategy, and